mic on. Mayor is not here, and I don't. Churches. Violence. Thank you. If we could all stand for the pledge. Thank you. And just confirming, is Ken on there? Jordan, can you see? He's trying to log on. Okay.
Ready. Log in.
It should be on, what's on the same link that'd be on the front page.
Right.
I think you have a quorum, so it's fine. I can try to send them.
All right. Well, let's get rolling. We have one thing and one thing only on the agenda tonight. That's why we're having this special meeting. I hope you're all here for the Strengthening Community 2030 meeting. If not, sorry, you're in the wrong meeting. Again, we're just going to go through the presentation. Elijah's got a very thorough presentation he's going to go through. For those of you that are not aware, we started this process last April 2023. I'm not going to steal too much from your presentation. And we had 6 public meetings. So hopefully several of you, if not all of you, came to some of those meetings and contributed to what is now in the final draft, which was put together last April. So it took about a year, right, to get the final draft.
Right. It started last April. The draft was basically completed early this year and then went through a few rounds of review from the steering committee.
So everyone's aware this is a plan that affects all 3 local municipalities within the Warwick School District. It's Warwick Township, Elizabeth Township, and Lititz Borough. Warwick Township has adopted it. You said Elizabeth Township is
Monday night, the 16th.
on next Monday. So we're number 2 in the order here. But we're looking forward to you guys seeing the final draft that was created, listen to your questions and answers. If there's anything that we have that we want to take forward, we will need to take that back to the other municipalities with any suggestions that we might come up with tonight. So, Elijah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Did you want me to be here or up there?
Up.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I think I know most of you. I'm Elijah Yerrick. I'm the Managing Director of Planning and Development here at the Borough. So this is the overview of the Strengthening Community 2030, which is the regional plan for our region. Next slide, Jordan. So, yes.
That's fine. We have it up here.
Okay.
I have it up here too.
Yep.
They want you to see it because this is a public meeting. Also, there is food and refreshments. So if you do need anything, please help yourself. So what is a comprehensive plan? The law defines it as a statement of objectives for the municipality concerning land use, housing, movement of people and goods, community facilities, natural and historic resources, short and long range strategies, and interrelationships between these points. Next slide, Jordan. It's required to be reviewed and updated if appropriate every 10 years. What happens if you don't? Not a whole lot. Next slide. But it does provide a foundation for future decisions, but implementation is ultimately up to each municipality. If we adopt this tonight and do nothing, there is no punishment. But what it does is it provides a transparent, public-facing document that shows what our policy goals and desires are moving forward. If we want to change ordinances, this document is the support for that. Next slide, please. As Steve touched on, this is a regional comprehensive plan for the entire Warwick School District region. It's for Elizabeth Township, Warwick Township, and Lititz Borough. So if you read the plan, there are some things in there that do not apply directly to us. There are some things that are regional, and there are some things that are just borough specific. Next slide. So this is actually the fifth incarnation of this. It originally started with Lititz Borough and Warwick Township coming together in 1999 to really prioritize goals for the future. This is the fifth update. It's the 25th anniversary. And I will just say from my own personal experience, I had an internship with the DCED in 2006, and they had me call Dan Zimmerman and say, why did you guys readopt this? They were multi-municipal and regional planning is not the norm in Pennsylvania. And it is definitely not the norm to do it for 25 years. So this is significant, and the fact that we work together with our neighbors in this school district is really something special. Next slide, please. So this is an overview, as Steve touched on. These are the public meetings that we had for discussion. The first one was a community. Everyone here was at a public meeting? Anyone that wasn't at a public meeting? If so, we're sorry we missed you. It started out as a community kickoff. This was really kind of a high-level discussion about what everyone wanted to see. Then we focused on sort of the topic areas of the plan: economic development, housing, community services, quality of life, building natural infrastructure, and then we had a review of the draft strategies about a year ago at the Warwick School District Middle School. Next slide, please. So what came out of this? We're in a pretty good place, but the three key challenges we had are housing, which is tangible, complexity, and complacency. A lot of the issues that we face now are not something that is easily solved. Housing touches both of these things. Housing is not just a Lititz Borough problem. It's not a Warwick Township problem. If you look across this country, it is a problem across the country. And the approaches to this isn't something that we can just solve as a local government, but that doesn't mean we can be complacent. There are some things that we can do to try to improve this, but Lititz Borough Council is not going to be the end-all be-all for housing. Next slide, please. So just to touch on this, this was a survey that was done at the housing meeting. 91% of those in attendance felt that housing was a significant problem within the Warwick School District. Next slide. But it's not just the Warwick School District. The Hourglass Foundation had a deliberative forum about a year ago. That was basically an in-depth discussion with about 50 people to talk about housing. They came out of that there was basically a crucial need for more housing in the county. This is some of not the discussions from the forum, but some of the facts that they came up with after. When looking at 365 other metropolitan areas in the country, we are in the bottom 5% with vacant housing. They estimate that we would need 7,000 to 12,000 new units to even get average for other cities in the country. And then the new housing, what is being built here, isn't actually matching what the families are. So single family homes and couples are increasing. Homes with small children, like my house, have actually decreased almost 10%. But guess what's getting built? Number one type, 4-bedroom houses. And part of that zoning, part of that's what's in place now. So as a local government, we need to sort of consider that. Next slide, please. So this is a touch on basically how the implementation will go. Council and the 2 boards of supervisors will appoint an implementation committee that will basically oversee task force. Unfortunately, this does touch on complacency because this looks very similar to the last version, except for I think this time there's an implementation committee that is going to try to drive things forward. There needs to be people that are passionate about this and that really want to make a change. I sat in some of these meetings and they were report outs. It was essentially me telling people what was going on. And there wasn't you should do this. We need some fresh ideas and we need some passionate people. Next slide, please. The plan high-level tasks 3 community conversations across the region for housing and economic development, community services and quality of life, and build a natural infrastructure. From there, it'll feed into more implementation projects that can be identified and pursued by the municipalities. Next slide, Jordan. If you go through the plan, other areas of focus: infrastructure, recreation, open space, transit, and reinvestment areas outside the borough. There's probably about 7 or 8 focus areas that are called out in the plan. They correspond with Brunerville, Brickerville, Rossville, and then the area north and south of the borough. There's not one specifically for the borough. Next slide, Jordan. So quick show of hands. Is anyone here hoping that the plan says the borough should be changed dramatically? That we should demolish things, that we should just totally revamp things? Anyone? Next slide. Good. Because really, when it comes to the borough, it tasks us to preserve and enhance what makes us unique. Next slide, Jordan. So this is actually a map of all the developable land in the borough. There's only 2% of it, a little over 2% of it that's undeveloped. If you look, the purple dot that's in the upper left, that's the back portion of Cargill. I don't see them selling it to another competitor unless they're going out of business. So that's probably off the table. You see there is a area that's kind of in the north central, and there's a couple areas that are tan. Two of those are adjacent to high density residential currently. And there is one that is red, that's also near high density. Those are really our only three areas that are developable that the future land use plan is proposing something different. We'll get to that a little bit later. Next slide, please. Other major implementation items, continuing to work to extend the rail trail to Broad Street. We're in the midst of this now. We're working with Norfolk Southern. It's taken longer than I would like, but it's actually moving forward, which is a plus. Once we finish the project that they've asked, then they've told us they will negotiate with us for the rest of the right of way. Once that happens, the trail can be extended. So this plan basically supports that effort. Next slide, please. It works to encourage redevelopment along Lititz Run that benefits both the community and the stream. The main property that this calls to is this one, which is the mill building. It is up for sale by Penn Medicine LGH. The most significant issue is it is entirely within the floodplain. The stream literally goes through the building. That makes redevelopment very difficult. They can essentially use the building for a use, but if they try to go beyond that envelope, then there's some significant challenges there. Next slide. It tasks us to preserve, restore, and repurpose historic resources while monitoring for demolition by neglect. We do have demolition review for any primary building and any historic secondary building. We do have form-based codes, but it's essentially telling us to keep up with this. And I think we could probably do a little bit more for demolition by neglect before they get to a time where it's demolition or nothing. Next slide. And this one isn't specific to us, but it's a significant one out of the plan. And that's to begin considering for the possibility of paid career firefighters. Out of the fire companies that serve this region, Lititz Fire Company is probably the best suited. But it is something that's on the horizon. It is something that we hear, and it's something that, to be transparent, we want to call that out as a possibility in the future. Next slide. So when this plan was completed, we sent it to municipalities bordering the region, the Warwick School District, and Lancaster County Planning. Next slide, please. We had no formal comments from the municipalities or Warwick School District, and Lancaster County Planning voted and determined it to be consistent with the county plan. So we're in a good place. Next slide. Planning Commission, Kyle's our chair. He's in the back trying to blend him. Reviewed and discussed at three public meetings in June, July, and August. We did have some people in attendance. Thank you. And the commission recommended adopting the plan with a few administrative comments. And that's what brings us here tonight, which is the final public hearing. Any questions? I guess that's for Steve.
I'll ask any questions, but the questions are coming to you.
Sure.
All right. Are there any questions? There's got to be some questions. I know that was a lot of information all in a condensed 5-10 minutes. Come on up, David.
Excuse me, Dave Carson, 220 East 6th Street. I appreciate your information, Elijah. And I see one of the main topics was housing and affordability. I don't want to be a broken record, but Lititz Borough raised their taxes 63% 2 years ago, had a tremendous surplus of $1.6 million from those taxes and other items, obviously. So if you're concerned about affordability for housing, it has to be addressed. I know there's talk about that going forward with certain things, but I think that if the focus on this affordability, that really needs to be looked at, not just looking at going to managers and asking them to spend money. The taxes were raised for particular purposes of paving. It wasn't raised for other items. So we had you had a $1.6 million surplus. You expected 18,000. So affordability, I think there has to be some kind of decrease, and I hope that'll be considered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? All these people came here with no question.
They just wanted the snacks, maybe.
Please eat the
They
snack.
didn't even eat the snacks yet, so they're not here for that either. That's good. Right? If there are no other questions, council, any questions for Elijah? For those of you that might not have been as actively involved, I know for everybody's, Mary has been the liaison with the comp plan. She's probably the most engaged with what's going on. Does anybody, council, have any questions?
Well, I'll just ask the obvious one. What happens next? What's our next step? What happens tomorrow?
Well, that depends on whether we vote to adopt the plan or not. So I am prepared to discuss that. And I guess I could go ahead and do it now, but
Yeah, I think if there's no one that has any formal comments beyond David's, then it's fine to discuss
Yeah.
that, yeah.
I have a couple of comments if I.
Go ahead.
Please, thank you. Yeah, so I want to thank the community for their participation in the process over the past year. Attending the six public meetings was very important. And this participation was part of the process to get to where we are today. So public participation going forward, and I think you're going to be talking about that, Mary, is critical to moving the plan forward and getting some specific objectives and actions plans related to some of the things that Elijah just mentioned. The borough, as you know, is a major part of this region. We are very much an economic generator in this community. And so we want to, as a borough, participate wholeheartedly with the other municipalities in developing and managing this plan and moving forward. I want to talk a little bit about one of the challenges, the complacency challenge that we have. I'm concerned about that. Over the past year or so, we've had a number of leaders in our community transitioned. We had transition in our Warwick School district. In the board, we had transition at the Warwick Township. We had some transition here in the Borough Council. And it's really, really important that we honor the past, acknowledge those people who were part of that, providing input, make sure we understand where they're coming from and mine their knowledge. But at the same time, to find other voices, new voices at the table. And so I'm hoping that here tonight, there might be some of you people would be willing to join us in our effort to keep the plan going forward. So I think we need to figure out a creative way to tackle the complacency issue and continue to get as many voices and other voices at the table as possible. So I support the plan. I think it's a good step in the process as we move forward. Our job is not done, but I think it's a good jumping off point for us. Thank you.
Just some comments. So I was reading through this. I did it a few times. And so some of the things that I came up with, so it talks about, since again, we are really, there's not a lot of land for us to develop. So it talks about reusing and redeveloping the mixed use urban land areas. So does that mean like I've got a house with a garage in the back and I want to turn it into an apartment to make some rent? Is that kind of where we're talking about reusing?
Yes, but that's already in place before
Okay.
this plan. So we've been very proactive in the past,
Okay.
I don't know, 5-6 years. So we opened up accessory dwelling units so that someone doing that could do that. One of the focus things is we never want to basically put an apartment building down in the middle of a residential neighborhood, like a 4-story. We want things to basically fit. And those accessory dwelling units where you have a garage or, you know, a room that might have an exterior entrance that looks essentially like the rest of the neighborhood, but you're still having like a small, hopefully, you know, economical apartment. That's already allowed by the ordinances that we have in place. The biggest sort of stumbling block to that would probably be the cost to bring that online, which is about $8,000 for just sewer and water and sewer tapping fees. We even looked into it going into this plan, and the engineers are basically advising us that we need to hold that line because it's difficult to basically manage it per person. It should be basically based on the average, and that's the cost for an average household to use the water. And it's essentially, I shouldn't say cost to use it. It's buying into a share of the system. It's buying in, just like you're a stockholder in a corporation, you're buying a share of the water plant, you're buying a share of the sewer plant. And by having that, have your own service of this for as long as the building is there.
The biggest thing that, just from my years of being on planning commission, we almost have I want to say harder, but definitely a different job than Warwick and Elizabeth.
Right.
Because they've got undeveloped land, they're planning for residential, commercial. We almost have to have a crystal ball to say Wilbur's going to leave, which happened to us obviously years ago, and that was zoned industrial at the time, and it was going to be hard to get another industrial use in there. So I remember working with Elijah, and we worked on the rezoning of that so it could become what it is today. We also, for those who don't know, we also have a Lititz master plan that guides some of the things, ordinance also, that has looked at, they always call it the Bomberger tract, basically the Wilbur chocolate, and then the whole track down through there. Then also, Elijah was referencing the mill building. It's hard to get a tenant that's going to come in for how many 100,000 square feet, that's down there. Granted, the parking's there, but the building has some challenges. So I think our bigger challenge is looking at some of those potential things that could happen. We've talked about, a couple of years ago, we called it the Southern Gate. Wise and ELA and Dunkin' Donuts and everything on it. We've got to be looking at those kind of things and see how we can support some of the proposals on here, whether it's housing, because if you make it just commercial, just retail, just industrial, we're kind of holding ourselves short to that because we have nowhere else we can put housing. So if you have mixed use, you can do that. That's really what happened with Wilbur. Mixed use, you have residential and retail commercial. So I say it's harder for us just because it's not like we can suddenly designate all of this land as such. We don't know who's going to leave. The bank corner has changed hands a couple times too.
So is this basically more, this helps for, say, developers who want to come in and look at areas that are still able to be developed. This plan kind of shows what we would like to go there.
And we can look at
Essentially.
some of our current zoning, and Mary's involved in the zoning also. This might guide some changes we would make in the zoning,
Right.
and it could be the density of our residential zoning, if it fits right. There's different things we'll have to look at through that, see where we could also incorporate potentially residential.
Yeah, so Tanea, if I can just speak to that, and for the people in the audience here, one of the things that I hear in conversations across the nation about some of the challenges with housing, if you're familiar with the term NIMBY, not in my backyard, comprehensive plans help communities understand the shared vision for the future. Hopefully, through the comprehensive planning process, we come to agreement about how we want to see things change and help alleviate some of those challenges that may come up in the future when we do implement the plan, and specifically related to things like zoning changes. So for instance, and Elijah and I spent quite a bit of time talking about this, this comprehensive plan, as Elijah showed in his presentation, does highlight some developable tracts within the borough. And the future land use map shows how we envision those being developed. And there is a recommendation in the plan through the future land use map that we increase the density that's allowed within some of those tracts. This is really important. And honestly, in my past, I have used a comprehensive plan to object to a development proposal in an area where increased density was not appropriate. And the comprehensive plan supported that. And we, the community there, were able to say, no, this is not the right development proposal for this tract of land. This is not what we envisioned when we adopted our comprehensive plan. I really, because of my past experience with this, feel very strongly that we need to understand what we're doing. We are saying we envision certain things for our future. So, yes, Tanea, for instance, we have maps. I asked Jordan here to create a couple of large maps so that people could come up and look at them, and they're very difficult to read in the plan itself. So Jordan created the one map over here is our current zoning map, and the other map over here shows our future land use. So you can see kind of how things might change in the future. The specific zoning designation isn't called out, but we do call for a high density residential zoning in certain tracts, which will allow us to meet some of our goals with respect to increasing housing in our community. And by increasing housing, we will achieve our goals of providing for more of a range of housing within the community, which helps address the question of affordability in part. So I don't know if anybody has any further questions based on that, but it's
I think to your question,
it is essentially what we are saying is here's the vision we have. It's our shared vision, and it allows us to move forward in a more efficient way towards achieving that vision.
the short answer is this will help guide some of our zoning. But I would say our zoning or our land development would end up coming before, I'm talking relevant to the housing or anything like that.
Sure.
So this, and I've been involved in these plans, I think this will be my fourth one. That's usually what starts to guide that discussion. If there's something that starts to come out of those meetings, it's going to come before our planning commission first, come through if there's proposed changes to the zoning that will have to align with this.
Oh.
But it can't, that's the whole purpose of this. Those changes will have to align with this. I'll
Right.
call it master.
Right. So these task force, how do we get community members? How do they get involved? Do they email? Go ahead.
I want to follow up on some of the things that Mary said. I think we do have a comment back
Oh.
here, so I don't know if it's appropriate. Go ahead.
Come on up.
Now, this is the whole reason we're doing this is to
Absolutely.
have the conversation with you all.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Michelle, 226 Noble Street. And it's actually a follow-up question for Elijah based on something we were talking about a little earlier. I think when you were talking about sewer and water connections for additional dwelling units being added onto an existing space. I think it was a bit ago, so forgive me if I paraphrase, but you use the example of it's like buying into a share, like you would buy a share of a company. Everyone who lives here buys into a share of the water and sewer. In that analogy, a company, when they completely sell all their shares, they just split their shares. So the people who get in early just make a lot of money. And then there's more shares available. But in this example, there's only so much water and so much sewer capacity. So when your sewer advisor talked to you about how we connect in, is there a concern about a maximum amount of resources that we have available for that?
So yes, but right now we're not anywhere near our capacity. So, and we actually share it with Warwick Township, and there is plenty on both sides. It may be a concern for Warwick Township, but based on our current approach and development and everything, we are not anywhere close to our maximum. Sure.
It basically comes down to the infrastructure we have. Yeah, we can't suddenly just build 100 more houses. Our infrastructure wouldn't be able to, shouldn't say exactly 100, but it's based on the infrastructure and the agreement we have with Warwick Township. I do remember a couple of years ago, we had some challenges. There was a couple of different proposed plans that were coming forth that we had to modify that agreement so that we could adopt different developments that were going to be happening. I'd say redevelopment, not new development.
And again, this being a regional plan, I mean, obviously the things that we have to consider as a board tonight in adopting the plan are the Lititz Borough specific items. But this is a regional plan, and we have always worked together and will continue to work together with Warwick Township and Elizabeth Township. We are connected to them. They rely on us from Elizabeth. They come down here for services. We go up there for trails and nature and agricultural land and things like that. There is a recommendation in the plan that there be a planning initiative. I can't remember the term that they use exactly for this one, but to look at whether Brickerville should be developed as a village. And if it were going to do that, it would probably require water and sewer. That's where the kind of question would come up that you're raising. And we would continue to have those conversations about whether we can provide that, whether it's appropriate, whether that's what we want for our region. Another recommendation that's in this plan is that we regularly review and update all of our plans for things like water and sewer infrastructure, transportation plans, those kinds of things. So we're doing a really good job here. I think these days of looking at our infrastructure, planning for maintenance, planning for repair, things like the water main break on Main Street make us think we need to move faster with that so that we don't have those kinds of expenses and challenges in our community. But this really helps give us a roadmap for moving forward in a logical way.
Hey, Mary.
Yeah. Hey, Ken.
Hey, guys. I got unmuted. I just wanted to step in here. The member from the audience that asked a question about resources, that's a great question. About 3 years ago, we did an Act 537 study about our sewage capacity because we were recognizing some development going on. And so we have been able to evaluate that we do have capacity to continue to add to our infrastructure, but it's not unlimited. As we gain efficiencies, we can continue to add capacity, but it's something that we got our eyes on, and that's a great question. It's something that we look at, I think, annually, or not annually, but on a regular basis to assess what our capacity will be. So that's a great question. And that was a while ago, so just wanted to step in there. Thank you for unmuting me, Jordan.
Why did you do that?
Hey, Steve, one other thing, I need to go back. I think Jerry summarized a lot of great points there. We have a lot to be grateful for. We have a number of leaders in the community that are talented, that have supported the comprehensive plan for a number of years. And I, for one, am excited about what they produce and what their vision is for us to consider. Jerry's right, though. There's a lot of information that we can tackle, but complacency or maybe just putting it off to the side because we get busy is not something that we want to do. I too want to make sure that we're engaged on a regular basis to support the committees, because this is a great way to build our future with a plan that many talented people have developed. So I support it. Thank you, Jerry, for your comments.
You're welcome.
I think the comment you made that it's intertwined with the infrastructure, everything, that's the basis of a comp plan. You've got to look at how one decision affects all the other 5 things that are in there. And that's really what I've experienced going through these comp plans in the past. But now it's even looking at more of a macro level, because it's not just Lititz. You got to say, okay,
Right.
or
Exactly.
vice versa. If Brickerville does get developed, how would that impact, what happens in Lititz? Would there be services? So, and we've even done that with different developments within just Lititz Borough, but that is what happens through this whole process. The different committees are understanding how it's impacting each other, whether it's a housing committee or infrastructure committee, or however we're going to break down then also between the different municipalities. So again, it's the overall guiding principles. It's the master plan is the best way I like to look at it. That's going to affect how we're going to implement with the other 2 municipalities.
So Mary, help me understand. You talked about vision for some of the spaces we have. I'm big in thinking about the future and vision. What does the plan tell us about our vision for the mill property that we just talked about? What's in the plan that gives us some indication what our vision is for that building?
So it doesn't get into the specifics of that project. Obviously, you look at the zoning that we have now, which is a mixed use zone. There's a lot of options there. But as I said, the floodplain is a significant impact. So if there was redevelopment outside the building envelope, that floodplain would need to be addressed. And it's not just at our level, which we have some jurisdiction over the floodplain. This is actually state jurisdiction of the floodplain. So it's things that could be, there may need to be grants that would do stream bank restoration that could pull that back. It may need to be partial demolition of that building. We are not developers, so we don't necessarily have that sketched out. But it really is tasking us to work with whoever the new owners might be to come up with something that would be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, and I'd say that's consistent with a comp plan, just so I'd say all council knows. It doesn't get down to that detail.
So-
That will be a product of the committees to get down to those details of different things that they would need to implement or how it could help align with the comp plan. But the comp plan won't say take these 5 properties and develop them this way.
Yeah, understand. My feeling is that I think there ought to be a conversation in our community about what our vision is for some of these projects, particularly that one. Why do we wait till a developer comes and develops it, and then we say, no, that's not fits our vision? And I would love to see us have a robust conversation about what does the borough would like to see happen at that building? What is our overall vision for that 100,000 square feet asset that's sitting in the middle of our community?
Jerry, I'll
And
share with you
so-
that specifically, and Karen will remember this, happens at the planning commission meeting. So we would actually take that and say, okay, what if, let's look at all these different what if properties. And I think, Karen, that might even be when we started to talk about the Southern Gateway. Remember, we talked with Elijah when we talked about that property even before LGH bought it. What we talked about before the Wilbur thing. So, our job is to remind the planning commission to continue to do that. I remember when I was on planning commission, we would do that every couple of years, Karen. We would say, hey guys, let's just start thinking about the what if property, something were to happen. So we need to task, I would say that's outside of the comp plan, but we need to task the planning commission with that specific property, to be thinking about that.
Go ahead.
It could also be a situation where we engage with somebody like the economic development company who would potentially serve as a liaison and help with some planning around what a future use of that may be. So that, as Steve said, is a finer level of planning than the comprehensive plan addresses.
Understand.
So we did
So-
that property, if I remember, Elijah, before LGH bought it, that was when we went to the Lititz Run Revitalization District.
Correct.
So just so you know, and I'd say all council, that kind of stuff is happening at the planning commission level, looking at some of those things. If there's things we see that we should remind the planning commission or ask them to look at, that's our job to say, hey guys, we'd like you to take a much more deeper look at this property.
And, this is classified as a mixed use zone underneath this future land use map in the previous one. Ultimately, what goes there is guided by zoning, and council has jurisdiction over the zoning. Planning commission offers recommendations to it. And just, I think, Kyle, was it 6-8 months ago? We looked at the uses of that specifically and said, from the planning commission's perspective, is there anything that should be added? Is there anything that should be removed? They ultimately decided it's fine as is. I think having a good idea for that tract, having something that we want to see in the future is good, but we can't get married to any one outcome because we're not the only party to this.
And I understand
You,
that.
you got it. You put together an ordinance or work with economic development to maybe attract a certain type of development. And you can also make it so you're not going to get another type of development. Big industrial building might not make sense, in that location. So that's the kind of stuff I would say, again, that's getting down to a much deeper detail than what this comp plan is doing. But whatever happens there has to fit within the comp.
And this comp plan focuses on that whole area, including
Yeah,
the
that's why I asked
Baumberger
the
tract.
question, yeah.
But yeah, we're not down to this is exactly what we want to see level, but it is highlighted as an area of concern.
I would hope that we would pay attention to that going forward with some of these community conversations that we have. Having that building sitting there, not doing anything right now it's an asset that we ought to be really, really engaged in some conversation.
And unfortunately, this will be the third time we've dealt with
Yeah,
that
that's true.
on that property.
Yeah,
I mean, back when it
let's
was
find a permanent.
what farmers originally, then it was Susquehanna.
Yeah, we can move on. I don't want to just
Oh, yeah.
focus on. Thank you.
Any other, I think that spawned off from one of your questions.
Okay. So as I'm seeing this right now, there are no task forces yet. Um,
And there's not an
and
implementation.
there's not an
Okay. Yeah.
implementation committee yet.
Okay.
The comprehensive plan devotes, honestly, it's about 10 pages that it devotes to outlining how we should organize in order to implement the plan. It is, from my reading, based largely on how we've done things in the past. As Elijah alluded to in his presentation, I'm not sure that that's the best approach. I've participated in some of those meetings in the past, and it is a lot of just sitting down and reporting out what you did, and that can be done in emails. It doesn't need to take people's time 7:30 in the morning to go to a meeting to have somebody report to you what they did. What I would really like to see done, and I'll be advocating for this, is for us to get together and rethink how we need to be organized to move forward in the future. I've given this some thought. We have elected leaders who are obviously the primary champions of the implementation of this. We are the guardians that you have elected to see us move forward. We have staff who are very, very capable staff in all 3 municipalities. We have volunteers who serve on boards and commissions. We have other volunteers out there. Some of you sitting in this room may be a volunteer who's going to raise your hand and say, I'm really concerned about the housing issue. I've got a passion for that. And I'm willing to spend a little bit of time each month talking about that and thinking about how what kind of solutions might be best for Lititz. We have professional service organizations who were involved in the development of the plan. Organizations such as the EDC, formerly Economic Development Company of Lancaster County, an organization called Tenfold, this Coalition for Sustainable Housing. We have a variety of organizations who have declared that they are willing to work with us and help us move forward. There are, these issues are being tackled by other people in the county. We are not alone with this. For example, just earlier today, I was at a forum called Unlocking the Potential for Outdoor Recreation in Lancaster County. What an opportunity for us as we're looking at a new trail coming into our downtown. The implications of that, as well as the opportunities of that, need to be given consideration. The housing issue. So we've got major employers here who need to be at the table. They need to be engaged in this conversation. Rock Lititz, Moravian Manor, Luther Acres, their employees can't find housing. They have to be at the table to help us figure this out and figure out what kind of solutions we can come up with to help address this housing crisis, honestly. So in terms of how we move forward, what I'm thinking in terms of next steps is that we'll get together, Elijah, myself as the liaison to the regional plan, elected officials, hopefully from Elizabeth Township, Warwick Township, as well as their senior staff, will be able to come together and come up with a creative structure for moving forward. The primary action that's called for is to have community conversations. We began that in the development of this plan, but we've got to have more. We've got to dive a little bit deeper. So we need you all at the table. We need you all to join us. We're considering some different ways that we can do that. It doesn't necessarily mean coming and sitting in a meeting, at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night. It might mean we gather for lunch someday, and that's our, opportunity to have conversation and talk through some issues, share ideas, that kind of thing. So a variety of opportunities for us to organize ourselves. But the main thing we need is fresh ideas and passionate people. I loved that when you said that, Elijah. Fresh ideas and passionate people. We have a sign-up sheet. Actually, we've got 2 sign-up sheets. We may even have 3 sign-up sheets. So I would encourage if you're interested in any of the issues, connectivity, bicycling, walking, housing, employer, if you're an employer and you're willing to come to the table and have conversations about your workers' needs and some ideas you're tossing around about that, let us know. We're going to convene ourselves hopefully in a way that is really going to be energizing and allow us to move forward efficiently and effectively over the next 5 years or so until we do this again. So that's what I envision.
All right, so Mary's gonna be waiting for all of you to sign up as soon as she's gonna be there. You're not allowed to leave until you sign up.
No cookies until you sign up.
So more to come on exactly. I think the first thing will be the group will need to share what groups you can get involved with. Oh, come on up, Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Smith, 218 Cambridge Lane. I had a question about rerouting truck traffic and if that falls under the comprehensive plan or if that is a separate issue altogether.
I'm not sure if it falls within the comp plan, but it is.
It's highlighted. It's something that's been an ongoing
Yes, it is.
focus. It's definitely more our priority than Warwick Township's. But it is something we looked at in the past. And the kind of short answer to it is there needs to be a place for 772 to go. The most logical solution to that is Newport Road. That's going to take Warwick Township to sign off on it. But also the last place we left that discussion is that Newport Road would need to meet PennDOT standards. It does not. So we need a significant investment to get there if PennDOT agreed to it. The sort of asterisk to that is the current 772 does not meet PennDOT standards. But it's the road. So it's something that is regional. It is something that it's not an easy solution. It's not something council can say we want it and it's going to be moved. But it is something that we discussed with Warwick Township, but we also understand that is something that they need to be a partner with it. They're not going to you can't force that on them.
Yeah, I remember meetings with Dan. It basically when the price tag came out on that, that's kind of when that slowed down a little bit. But it's obviously, I mean, it can be something that's discussed. However, if there is an infrastructure group in the plan, I'm sure that should come up during that.
Right.
All right.
In addition to Warwick Township and Lititz Borough, just west of us, I think it's Penn Township is also involved in that too. So it highlights the connectivity that these plans require.
All right. Any other question, comment? Not, we do need to get to the point of adopting this. What's that? Okay, go ahead.
Hello, excuse me. This is Carolyn Rice, the director of the Lititz Public Library. I just wanted to thank you so much for including funding the library in the comprehensive plan. I've only been on the job for a month and I've already seen how vital the library is. So, just a place for not only books, but community connection as well. So I'm just deeply grateful to the borough and to this community for recognizing the importance of sustaining and growing the library for future generations. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn.
Another one of our great partners. Thank you, Carolyn.
Jordan, any others? Okay. Well, what I was starting to say, we do need to adopt the comp plan via resolution. So if anybody is at that point, the next resolution, resolution 91.
I will make a motion that we adopt resolution number 991. The resolution of Borough Council of the Borough of Lititz, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, to adopt Strengthening Community 2030 with Warwick Township and Elizabeth Township as the 2024 update to the Joint Strategic Comprehensive Plan.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye. I was late on my eye,
Okay.
sorry. I was in favor.
All right, motion
Come
approved.
on, come on.
Thank you. Nothing else. And we kind of talked about the next steps already, right?
Well, I just I want to go back to the next step thing. I agree with the comprehensive way that you mentioned it. I get a little lost in all the details, how we're going to do that. And I'm just wondering who is I know you've been leading this effort, who is our champion to move this forward in the future. Managing all those different groups and processes is a pretty big task. And I'm just wondering how we actually get that done. And we don't have to answer that now, but I'm just saying that's something we need to pay attention to.
From our group, it's the two folks down on that end of the table. Elijah has been actively involved through it. Actually, even with the responsibilities of his role when we created his role, that fell on his responsibilities also, and working with the other managers. So Mary's the liaison. So my hope is two of them will come to us. We need help.
Okay.
For further, and they're going to report to us to say, hey, we have these 3 committees, these 4 committees, whatever. And we'll be vocal in these meetings. We'll find other ways to get out to get more people involved for Lititz, because obviously it's not just on us. The other 2 municipalities will have people, those groups also.
Yeah, and Jerry, you're right. This is a big lift, and it's going to be a big lift for staff. I think that was the default in years past, was that staff really carried the baton and got things done. It was a lot of, some of the things that came out of plans in the past were creating organizations such as the Warwick Emergency Services Commission. Thank you. Things like that. And as Elijah said, this plan is much more, has less concrete actions that we can just assign to staff to go do. And so we will no doubt need some resources to help us manage this. We will probably have to secure some professional services to help with things like facilitating some of these conversations. We are beginning to look at the budget for 2025, and that'll be considered as part of that. So implementing a comprehensive plan is it is our obligation as the elected officials in each of the municipalities. We are the champions collectively. But this is my assigned responsibility right now, and Elijah's assigned responsibility for right now. So
We need to be the champions. And I think the challenge that Mary's saying is there still needs to be the doers, and much like your previous position, fourth group there, companies would have their master or whatever they were trying to do, but you were doing the work and making sure the ball was still moving with them. So I think that's ultimately what we have to have, whether it is hired or somebody actually steps up, abilities to facilitate and lead the group to continue motion.
we also have a lot of capable people in our community who may be willing to help take leadership roles on certain issues. We'll see. So thank you all for being here tonight. It's really
We're
wonderful to see the turnout.
more to come on the next steps. Moving on beyond that, no unfinished, no other business. We do have, as with every council meeting, a public comments. Does anybody have any comments, questions on anything other than what we just talked about? Not?
Come on, David.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Well.
Thank you.